How's it going, everybody? CardboardSim is in the building, and today I want to do an in-depth tutorial on how to create a motorized trim wheel. Now, most of all this I didn't make, I just acquired, shall I say, and we'll get into all that. But nonetheless, let's get this thing rolling. So now this trim wheel is what I have. There's plenty of other people out there that has created their own. This is what I found works for me, as you've seen in my previous videos, and so I figured I'd share with you for those who would like to try it out and see if you can make it yourself. It's not hard. I've done all the groundwork, so all you gotta do is watch this video over and over, pause, rewind, however you gotta do it, and put it together pretty much. So here we are in Amazon, and these are the items that you're going to need to make this work. So you're going to need a power supply. This is what I purchased. I already had this. I had this a while ago. You need at minimum 12 volts because the motor is rated at 12 volts. But this one here is a 24 volt power supply, and it's a adjustable, so you just turn this little knob here, and there's a little display there, and you dial it in anywhere from 5 volts all the way to 24. So I have mine set to 12 because of the motor. You're going to need a plug to power this guy, and so this is the plug right here that you'll need to power this. Coming down, you have servos. The servo is going to be for your indicator. Now, I like to buy things in packs just to have extras in case I fry something, mess something up, or just have extras just in case I want to add something to the sim for later. So you only need one servo for the indicator. Potentiometers only need one. These are your 10K 10 turn precision. So when you're turning the trim wheel, your typical potentiometer, you can. It doesn't go much, maybe 2 or 3 little turns, and you're pretty much capped out on both ends. This one, you're turning. So it gives you more precise readings than what the regular 10Ks pots that we use for things. So you need that. Here is the stepper motor driver for your stepper motor. Do not try to plug this in and run this without that. You will waste your money because you will fry this thing. You need a stepper driver. This is the one that I went with. So if you want to mimic what I've done, get this one. Now, this says temporarily out of stock. I'm pretty sure somebody else on Amazon has it. Just look for the TB6600 stepper motor for a NEMA 17. Because that's what this stepper motor is. It's a NEMA 17 stepper online. Well, that's the name, but anyway, it's a NEMA 17 motor. So, how this works: you have 4 wires coming off the motor. The motor has 2 motors in it. So 2 wires go to one motor, 2 wires go to the other. You want to plug that in this box here. So let me come here. So as you can see on the right hand side there, you have motor A, motor B, motor B. So 2 goes to A negative, A positive, B negative, B positive. Now before you go plugging it in, you want to verify to make sure that the 2 cables are in fact on the same motor. And the easy way to check that is, once you get this in the mail, you take the white clip, plug it into the motor, snip these heads off here, so where you have bare wire on this end, and you want to take 2 wires at a time and twist them together, and then turn the motor. If you feel resistance, then those 2 wires go to one motor. If you put 2 together and there's no resistance and it's just free spinning, then those are 2 separate wires for the 2 separate motors. So do that. Once you figure it out, then you know what to do, and then you just go back here, like I said, and one motor goes to one motor goes to the other. It doesn't matter if it's negative or positive, they both gonna read regardless of how it's wired. Just make sure that they're on the same. Okay, so with that, you have your potentiometer, you have your positive, your negative, and your signal wire. Servo, same thing, positive, negative, signal wire. Now, you're gonna run, once you get this wired into here, you're gonna plug your, you're gonna run a positive and negative to the power and negative here on your driver, your stepper motor driver. So now you got power to your stepper motor driver, you got your motor plugged in. Coming up here, you got your pulse negative, pulse positive. You're going to want to run pulse negative into a ground, and your pulse positive is going to go to a signal pin. Direction negative is ground, direction positive is a signal pin. This is where it changes. You want your enable positive to be at 5 volts, and you want your enable negative to be a signal. I'll explain why that is. So if you just ran enable negative to ground and enable positive to, you know, your pin out, what you're doing is you're feeding 5 volts to the motor all time. So think of it this way: negative is low, positive is high. So that's resistor in a sense. So if you plug the pin in on high, that's sending a signal to the motor to turn on. So your motor's always gonna be turned on. You don't want to do that. So you send a low signal that says, okay, there's no power supplied now because there's nothing staying to turn it on. That's why you do it that way. Okay, makes sense? I'll show you once we get into Mobiflight. But that's pretty much the setup on this, minus this. Now, on to the front side of this thing. So on the front side, you can see right there, you have these dip switches, right? So these dip switches, they are, you set them according to how you got your section, your motor and everything set up. So I'll tell you how I have mine set up. Now, the NEMA 17 motor that I'm running is a 200 pulse revolution motor. Problem with that is the jumps are bigger, so it's not as smooth, you know. So what I've done is I've stepped it down to micro step 8, which is 1600. So I'm running an off on the 1, 2, and 3 switch. So you just come up here and you see 1, 2, 3. So to be off, or off is up, on is down. So to be off, on, off. Now I got these numbers from the Mobiflight Discord. I was reading through all of their information and, you know, seeing how everybody else went about doing their motorized trim wheel, and I ran across one of the conversations with a couple people, and I pretty much took their information and just plugged it into mine to see how it works, and it works. So I'm running 1600 on the pulse revolution, and on the current, the motor is rated at 2 amps. I'm running it at 0.5. So S4, S5, and F6, all 3 of those come down to on. I ran it at 2. That's a lot of torque. 2 amps for a trim wheel is a lot of torque for me. I mean, and you can play around with these settings as you see fit. But I've learned that the lower amperage is not as strong, because you don't need it to be as strong. I just need it strong enough to turn the motor, pretty much. So that's enough amps to turn it. That's how I have it set up. Okay, y'all tracking? Cool. So that's everything that you need to order. Now we're gonna go over to BFF simulations. This is the man who created this trim wheel. Now he gives you the STL files, right? Let me get out of here. So when you come over to his website, and I'll leave the link to the list in Amazon. And as a disclosure, I'm not an Amazon affiliate. I don't make no money off of this. This is pure love for the game and just showing y'all how I went about doing mine and just giving back to the sim community. So all that'll be there, plus the link to BFF's website. So when you come in here and you go to motorized trim wheel, there's a few things you want to do. Now, you originally could purchase the whole thing from him and he would build it and send it to you. Now, he's having an issue with the cars, these cars right here that he created. It's some international with parts and long story, but nonetheless, as of now, he cannot get these cars made. So there ain't really nothing you could do about it. Now, you could probably still have him 3D print you all the parts if you want, or you hopefully you have one. If not, know somebody who has one. If not that, then you might have to purchase it from him. And here's the purchase information page if you want to purchase it. So for those who already have access to a 3D printer, this is where you start. So you click on the STL file here, and this is all free. So you click here, you download all the files, you print them out. Another note, this right here is this is the original trim wheel itself. It's very, very big. I wouldn't recommend printing that. Okay. So a customer contributed to the wheel and made a Cessna style. That's the one that I have. It's smaller, it's one piece. The original one is a 4-piece trim wheel. So you got 2 backs, 2 fronts, then you gotta bring them. Just do yourself a favor and download the Cessna style wheel. So now you got all your parts printed out. You got all your stuff ordered. So now let's go to the build side. So we're gonna come into the build side, and there's a couple things you need to know. Now, here's this shaft collar. I was looking for the shaft collar and I was gonna order one. Now the purpose of the shaft collar is to go around this little piece right here that sticks out of the hub. The gear shaft slides through that little hole there, and then you put that over top of that and you tighten it down to keep the hub and the shaft, nice and tight. Now when I printed this out, I don't have a shaft collar. I have nothing on it. The print is very tight. It's a 5mm shaft. That's a 5mm hole, but it's a very, very nice press fit. And for the trim wheel, I don't think it's gonna slip. I don't think like you start putting a lot of amps on it and torquing it, you might start getting some slippage, But I don't think you necessarily need it. I mean, unless your print for some odd reason doesn't print it as tight, then you might want to go about getting one of those. So outside of that, there's a couple things you're going to need. You're going to need 4 M3 screws for the motor, which are going to go into these 4 holes right here. So you see the holes on the motor, slide it in, and you're good. Keep in mind on where your wires are coming off the motor. You want to make sure that your motor is lined up to where you see these 2 holes. There's 2 holes on the other side. Line these holes up. And I guess it really just depends on how you have your trim wheel set up in your sim. But you want to have it lined up to where the wires are easy accessible and they're not being crimped behind there, and they can just come out of one of these holes. So you need 4 M3 screws. Now, what he doesn't tell you is how long they need to be. I went out and purchased 4 M3 by 16s. Too long. But I wasn't going back to the store, so I just washed it up. I think I ended up using 2 extra washers. So you could probably get away with maybe a 12. I think an M3 12 will work. So you need 4 of those, and you're going to need where are you at? You're going to need, it says 8 M3 screws and nuts for this trim wheel. But if you're going to do the Cessna, you don't need that. So I ended up using the same screws I use for the motor, and I just bought some nuts to go with them. So one set just need. Now you could probably find, if you can find a pack of M3s that come with the screws and the nuts, that'd be perfect. You'll just have spares. But that's what I use. Like I said, you could probably get down to a 12 and be just fine. So those are the other things that you're gonna have to, hardware store, Lowe's, Home Depot, whatever, wherever you go and get your hardware stuff from. Now, how this works is the motor goes in there, like I said, you tighten that down. Your indicator ring is gonna then come over these little clips here. Now, I don't have this up and running because I modified mine to my sim. But if you want this exactly to look like where you're at, where are you? Let me go back. There it is. So this is what yours will look like if you didn't change anything. You see, there's the shaft collar, there's the indicator cover, there's the servo, and then there's the motor coming through the shaft. And this is without the hub on. Your servo, your potentiometer, right? And then your main bracket there for everything. So let's get back over here. So tighten down the motor, and then your indicator is going to go into one of these holes. So you just flush mount that on this side, find a hole, but don't tighten it because you're going to have to figure out how you like I said, how you have your setup. Once you figure out how you want it, set it down. Indicator ring goes on over these clips, and then just make sure when you're turning it that it's smooth and it's not getting hung up on anything. So you're going to put the small gear on the servo, and the servo is going to go into these two holes. Tighten that down. The screws that come with the servo, it works for this. The servo is going to turn the indicator. Okay. Potentiometer is going to go in this little C hook area right there, and you can slide it around as needed. From there, you're going to now take your hub, put your hub up against the you can slide the hub onto the shaft. This gear is going to run right up against the hub, so your motor and your potentiometer will be synced at all times. Starting to make sense. Then from there, you take your trim wheel. You're gonna it's gonna get bolted down here on the outside edge of the hub, and then that's it. That's pretty much how you put it together. Okay, so you got all that done, all your parts are in, the whole assembly is set. Now it's time to put this thing to work. So now I'm gonna come over here to Mobiflight, and I'm gonna show you how this works here. So in Mobiflight, you're gonna need a few things. Let's start off with the trim wheel, the potentiometer, shall I say. So that's gonna be an input action. So you want to come over to Mobiflight modules, pick whatever card you're using. I think mine is on the left. Yep, there's my trim wheel, and as an analog doohickey device. Now I know for those of you who already know how to work Mobiflight, this is kind of like, yeah, I know information, but some people don't really know how to work Mobiflight, so I'm trying to make sure I cover all bases. And I might do, if y'all want me to do more in-depth tutorials on how to work Mobiflight, let me know in the comments, and I'll start working those into my schedule and into my list of videos. So you come in, you create an analog pin. Right now I have mine set to all the way to 1. That's the most sensitive because it reads very, very thin. If you set it down to the default, which is 5, what's going to happen is the potentiometer is going to read every 5 steps. So you're going to get this motion when you're trimming. Like you'll be turning, and it'll turn, and it'll do that. So you don't want that to happen. So I got it always set so it'll be nice and smooth. So once you get that set into place, you come in here. You come over to your input, find the board, the device, and in the action type, it's going to be Microsoft Flight Simulator. You're going to do a custom variable, or pretty much. Custom code, input value, whatever you want to call it. Now, how do I go about getting this? It's very, very simple. Once you get your potentiometer plugged in and you get to this point, what you're going to want to do is, as you start turning, you see these numbers here. When you turn your potentiometer, those numbers are going to start changing. So you want to turn it all the way to the left, and whatever the lowest number is, say, keep that number, write it down or whatever, because you're going to need it. Turn it all the way to the right. When it stops, that last number, you want those two numbers. Now, what I normally try to do is dial them back one number each. So let's say my lowest number is 13, I'll set it to 14, because sometimes, don't know why, but the signal will cause the board to, like, it'll shut the system down. It's almost like it's tapping out. So you don't want it to tap out. So I normally go at least one number up and then one number down. So like I said, if it's 13 on the low end, let's say 157 on the high end, I'll do 14 and 156, right? So then I'll take those two numbers, I'll come over here to hub hop, I'll come up here to tools, and in the device output range, I will come in and click my Arduino, because that's what I'm using. And then I will scroll down to where I find elevator trim, and then I will plug those two numbers in. So the lowest number go to the left, highest number go to the right. Once you do that, so let's say I said 14, and let's say the other number was 157. You see it already changed the code to what the what flight sim will actually read it as. So then you just drag, copy it, and you go back into your trim wheel and you paste it down here. So if you don't know, it's going to come up, this is how it's going to look in the beginning. You just hit the show preset code and then you paste it in there. Trim wheel is set. Now once that's done, that's it for input. Everything else is output. You're going to need four things to write. One for the servo, and then three for the actual motorized trim wheel portion. So we'll start with the servo, and the servo is for the indicator. So it's gonna be the same thing, Mobiflight, all that good stuff. You come in and you add your indicator. Make sure that when you add it, it's actually a servo. Set the pin, right? Then you're gonna come over to the edit side of the indicator, display, output device, the board type is gonna be the servo, and then whatever you named it, you're gonna grab that one. Your minimum and maximum values for the servos is 0 to 255. Okay. Once that's set, you come to modify. You're gonna need to interpolation, however you want to call it. Now, in the sim reads the indicator from a -1 to a 1 value because it reads in integers, right? Well, if you set your indicator servo to 1 and -1, it's going to move a little bit because it's only going to read that one integer. So what you want to do is say, okay, well the sim reads it from here to here, which is -1 and 1, but the servo readout is 0 to 255. So that's how you bring that in so that the sim can feed the servo and use the servo at its full functionality. So 0 being minimum, 255 being max. Now, if let's say however you have your servo set up and it's not turning in the right direction, easy fix, come in here, swap the 255 and zeros around, and now to reverse the wheel. And then in your sim variable, it's literally, I'm using the Microsoft generic control elevator trim indicator, and that's it. So that is set. Now for the get this thing to work, to motorize this thing, you're gonna need 3 different actions, I guess you can say. So the first one you want to set up is your Autopilot master on off. And that's going to be a LED. Now, remember when I was telling you on the stepper driver on the enable side that you want your enable negative to be a pinout. This is where this comes into play. So the pinout, that when you take it from the driver over into, you know, whatever Arduino card, you want it to read as an LED, because all it is just, you just wanted to give it a signal. So you use the LED as an output, right? Then when you come in here, you're going to use the Microsoft generic Autopilot, the Autopilot master preset, and it's an on-off flag, right? So all it does is it just flags this Mobiflight to let you know, okay, Autopilot is on, Autopilot is off, right? No modifications. Your display, you know, is an output device, what board, LED, and then whatever you named it. You don't have to worry about the PWM because it's not necessarily an LED. And no preconditions. So that's how you set that up. Now, what's going to happen is right now this is reading 0. Now I don't have the system up and running. It looks like it, but I don't have it running. This is actually the 4th attempt of me doing this video, because for some odd reason me doing this video and the sim is running, for some odd reason it just didn't want to act right. And so I was supposed to have this video out yesterday, but I got tired of doing it after the 3rd round. So but nonetheless, let's get back to it. So right now, let's say you're in the sim, Autopilot is off. It's going to read 0 because Autopilot is off. When you turn Autopilot on, this is going to then turn into 1. So 0 is off, 1 is on. Cool. Now you break it down into 2 different sections. You have a trim wheel off and a trim wheel on, because the system is going to have to understand what you want it to do. So start off with the off button. Well, it's not really off button, but how it reads it. So sim connect, the sim variable is going to be the same thing, the Microsoft generic control elevator trim indicator. So everything is synced together between the indicator and the motor. Over to modify. Well, let's go to display first. So display, same thing, set it all up. Now I got these numbers once again from the Mobiflight Discord, running through and reading everything, and this setup seemed to work for me. So I have my full the display scale is 2128 steps per revolution. As all it's saying is it's more revolutions to make one turn than the typical 200. And in the full revolution, I'm using 16. So remember when I was on a stepper drive and I told you I'm using 1600? This is where I'm using it from. And then on the modify section, you want to transform. So you want to add a modifier, hit transform. Then you want to add the money sign, the little star 400, which is a multiplication. So that's normally shift 8, the little star on the number 8. So shift 8 gives you the little star 400. So that multiplies the 200 steps that the motor comes with times that and that and that. Yeah, it's some weird stuff. I understand what they're saying. It just doesn't make sense sometimes. It's just put that down, okay? Just put the star 400 down. Okay, all right, good. We're good there. Now on to the precondition. This is where it gets funky. So you want to set up a precondition, right? So you'll click on that. You want to come down, create a config type, a config item, and then where you see Autopilot master on off, that's why I wanted you to do that first, because you're going to need this in order to use the precondition. So you're going to scroll down, you find it, you click on it, that's in there. Now we are doing the Autopilot trim wheel off side, so you want to make sure that this precondition equals 0. Okay, and then all you do is repeat the process for the on position Same thing, same sim variable, same modify, same display, all the information over here. Why is that 5,000? That should be 1. Let me change that. Okay. And then on the precondition side, it's going to be the same thing, but instead of being 0, you want it set to 1. Okay. So this is how this works. Well, it's not going to show because I don't have a sim running. So what's going to happen is, right now you're sitting in the sim and autopilot is off. These numbers are going to be jumping around because they're following the sim. But since autopilot is off, it's going to read 0. Therefore, the motor is not motorized, and you can manually turn the trim wheel. Right? So if you're flying along, you want to manually trim it out, that's fine, because it's attached to the potentiometer, which therefore is going to turn your indicator, which is going to therefore trim you out, all that good stuff, right? When you hit autopilot and autopilot comes on, this number right here, these two numbers are going to turn to 1. That is going to energize the stepper motor. So when it's off, the system is seeing, okay, it's off. I don't need to do nothing. I don't need to energize. I'm just back here chilling. When you hit autopilot and it turns on, that turns to 1. The autopilot trim wheel on function says, hey, autopilot is on. I got work to do. And that's how that works. And then you're good to go. You're on autopilot. The trim wheel is turning and doing its thing. And that is it, y'all. In a nutshell. I did all the groundwork, like I said, so you don't have to go through and struggle and try to figure this all out. Just watch this video, like I said. Do whatever you got to do with it. Pause it, rewind, repeat, however. And if you have any questions, let me know down in the comment section and I will reply back. If you want to get a little bit more in depth with it, I prefer you meet me over in my Discord, where I can really go one-on-one with you and help you along the way. So that's all I have for this video. I hope that you found this very, very helpful. Give me a thumbs up if you learned something. I would like excuse me, for any of you who are actually going to attempt this, definitely come over to the Discord and post it in the Discord. I would like to see your work and things of that nature. What I might end up doing is I might just set up a motorized trim wheel section, just so everybody can kind of put their ideas and information and stuff in there, so we don't get information lost. So I might do that after this video. But yeah, that's it. So I have nothing else. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and like I said, give me a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't, and we'll have many more of these coming in the future. Yeah, so have a good one. CardboardSim signing out.